Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Phil Mike Likes You with your host, me, Phil Mike. I'm a DC area comic. I've been doing it for about 6 years now. And on this show, I talk to the people I like about the things they know best. And on today's show, we have Cheryl Krause. She is a very important guest because she's been doing physical therapy for the last 7 years or so. And I have had back problems for the last 5 to 7 years. So we're going to get to the bottom of a lot of these problems and probably address a lot of concerns you guys have. So Cheryl, thanks for coming on the show.
Of course. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So you're a very important person. I think a lot of people are going to be interested in what you're going to say. So just to make sure people know a little bit about you, make sure they know a little bit about your background, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself and how you got into physical therapy?
Yeah, so like Phil said, I've been working in a PT clinic for the past 7 years or so. Currently, I'm a licensed physical therapist assistant. So I work for a large hospital system, work in like an outpatient physical therapy clinic, more so treating orthopedic type of patients. And I'm also a graduate student, so I'm currently studying to get my doctorate in physical therapy. I love talking about physical therapy. I'm an advocate for physical therapy. I'm a believer in it. So I'm happy to, give what knowledge I have with my experience about all of this. So,
well, cool. Let's get started with just sort of the right off the top bat. A lot of people I know have lower back pain. It's something that I feel like someone my age wouldn't be expecting to feel that. Everybody's working from home. We're all sitting down. We're doing all that type of stuff. And I understand that it's one of the most common issues that a lot of people have when they come in to see you. So maybe give us a little bit of information on what exactly is happening right now. Why are people getting back pain? Why is this happening to everybody all at once?
So, interesting. So, current statistics says that about 80% of Americans are going to experience some sort of back pain in their life, whether it's once, whether it's multiple times kind of thing. So it's very interesting. It's almost like expected to have back pain, but it's kind of like the question as why. So if you think about like past history in terms of like evolution standards, we come from like primates, right? Who originally are like quad-pedaling animals. So they're walking on all fours. However, their spine was relatively straight. And through evolution, we've developed into being bipedaling. So we just walk on 2 feet. However, you have gravity that is kind of putting stress onto your spine now. So as humans, we've kind of developed these natural curves in our spine. But over time, a lot of different factors can contribute to low back pain in terms of like how gravity is kind of like slowly compressing our back pain as we get older. So it's almost inevitable in like your human life to have some sort of back pain. So it's all about knowing how to manage it and also how to prevent it, going on later on in life and everything. So
like when you see people come in and like, is the stereotypical person coming in with back pain, is there a stereotypical person who has lower back pain, or is it pretty much just everybody? And like, are there more just dudes and girls coming in right now complaining about it? Like, is that happening?
I mean, just given with like the pandemic that's happened, in my specific clinic, I've definitely seen more of, just because they had their lifestyle change with the pandemic, they had to stay at home. The whole office like desk setup has completely changed to what they had available to them in their office. So, people who have wooden chairs that they sit on and, not the best work setup that over time is going to cause compressive forces or just a lot of different stresses onto like your spine or different areas of your body that could cause some pain. However, I think it's important to understand that there's many different pathologies pertaining to low back pain. You have the standard of like a herniated disc, that's pretty common, and you hear that from a lot of people. But then you also have other pathologies in terms of like scoliosis. And so there's all sorts of different low back pathologies. And for the most part, there won't be like a specific diagnosis for your back pain, even though you're like, okay, I have back pain, but at the same time, like, is it really worth getting surgery? Is it really worth like going through all these invasive procedures, or could you go to physical therapy and do more of like a conservative type of method in terms of like knowing how to strengthen certain areas of your body, knowing how to stretch certain areas of your body, just to help alleviate some of that pain.
So like when people have what I would probably consider, and like this is someone like myself talking about, I would just call like chronic mild soreness, where I'm either probably like tight or my hips are and I'm complaining about whatever, and I have to attribute it, I assume, to either like my bed, how I sleep, my chair, where I just feel like it's just like a mild, like what I would consider mild. Like I don't think anyone's going to do surgery on me, for this stuff.
Right.
But like what would be happening to someone like me or a lot of people where you're just kind of sitting down, you're kind of hunched, and you've been doing it for years, but you kind of always have a little bit of like tightness or soreness in your back?
Yeah, and given that you're a young fella, I think that over time, it could cause more detrimental effects if you were to continue the same route that you're doing in terms of like having poor sitting posture, not being, as mobile, like you're having a sedentary lifestyle. So I think usually low back pain is more associated, like it's all multifactorial. It could be sedimentation, it could be your weight, it could be your posture. It could be your strength. There's so many different factors. However, I think it's all about knowing what the right approach for you is. And usually with low back pain, I would say more than 60% or so, it'll resolve in a few weeks. If you have an acute episode, meaning that like you just had pain and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a new pain. I like literally can't move right now. It usually will resolve a little bit on its own after like a month or two. But again, it's more of like trying to avoid the chronic pain onset, which is about, a lot of Americans, I would say, eventually will have chronic pain. And so we have this whole opioid epidemic going on, and that's what people turn to because it's kind of like an easy route type of thing. So yeah, I think it's very individualized. Even though how common low back pain is, it's all about knowing what's best for you and knowing how to address that appropriately, more so.
So like when my back is sore, normally if a muscle is sore, it means I worked it hard and I was exercising and I was doing something to strengthen it or whatever. But when your back is sore or lower back is sore, kind of like in this sort of chronic sort of hunched position, or like I'll have some like in my neck or back or whatever because I'm kind of sitting in a certain way with the mouse or whatever.
Yeah. When
it's sore, it's not getting stronger. So what is why is it hurting? And I know I can like stretch it and we'll get into that, but like it's just like getting tighter and worse, so it's like just...
Yeah, I think a lot of what I tell my patients, it's all about that balance between knowing to move your body at the appropriate times. So I usually recommend every 30 minutes, every hour, trying to adjust your position. So I have a lot of people who have standing desks and like, oh, a standing desk is great. However, if you're sitting down, if you're standing, if you're walking or doing any sort of prolonged activity, that's going to cause back pain over time. Just because, your muscles are eventually going to fatigue. There's certain muscles in your body that are meant for endurance, such as, your core, your postural muscles, more in like your back muscles. That's more for posture, right? Because you're always going to have some type of posture. Otherwise, you're going to just fall over all the time. compared to other muscles like your big glute muscles in your hips, your quad muscles, your leg muscles. Those are more of your power muscles, more like functional things that you need to do, like squatting or that type of thing. So different muscles have different purposes, and so I think it's just learning and being educated on which ones you need to kind of turn on to be able to support your back a little bit better.
So like when we're sitting at a desk, which is, most of the time, or like laying on the couch or doing something, obviously we're laying down, sitting down for too much of our lives. What is basically happening? Because what I'll find is like I'll be sitting down and I'll find myself shifting positions, but it's kind of like what you're saying where like I start getting tired on one side and then I switch like to my other side. I don't necessarily know if that's the best thing in the sense that like I just feel like I'm putting strain on one side of my body or the other. And so basically like when we're sitting down, we're weakening our bodies for like too long. Like if we're sitting down for like 8 hours a day without proper sort of maintenance workouts and moving around. So like what is sort of atrophying there? Like when we're sitting in these chairs and stuff like that, like our legs are getting weaker, our hamstrings are getting weaker, like what is happening?
I don't know if I necessarily classify it as atrophying, but I think it is a weakness component. I think it's that balance between weakness and tightness in certain muscles. And again, there's a difference between muscular issues in terms of low back pain and an actual like structural issues within like the bone, the disc, like within the spine. So going back to the different pathologies, it's kind of like, okay, like, is it actually a herniated disc that is compressing the nerve roots that come through your spine, or is it an actual muscular tightness where you feel like there's different types of pain, right? So there could be like burning pain, shooting pain, dull ache pain. It could be soreness, that kind of thing. So there's different classifications of pain, and that usually will give me a better idea of maybe what's going on in terms of the pathology of the low back pain kind of thing and how to resolve that.
So like if I'm like constantly sitting like slumped, right?
Yeah.
Every day. And will my spine eventually just accommodate that, and then I will have like some of these structural issues that we're talking about, or does something like abrupt need to happen or like more extreme? Like if I'm just constantly slumped over, I feel like my spine's going to turn into like the wrong shape.
Yeah, exactly. Like over time, if you think about like just the gravitational forces that go on, and you do have normal degenerative changes that happen in your spine as you get older. That's completely normal in terms of like arthritis and like just your bony structure. It's just not as, the integrity is not as good compared to like, when you're 20 and, very young. So over time, I would say if you were to continue sitting in that posture and like shifting back and forth, I mean, that's how chronic pain kind of starts to develop and everything. But then there could be like traumatic instances where, whatever happens and you have a blowout in your back. Like, I mean, there's different instances for that type of thing. But in terms of like posture, yeah, I mean, if you were to do that, I think when you're 40, 50 years old, then you're definitely going to be in a lot of pain, I would say.
Well, I feel like it's so hard for anyone to be doing it exactly right. And like, it's just really hard to sort of keep up with. Like, on a side note, do you feel pressure sort of like the way like a dentist would feel if they had like tartar on their teeth or whatever? Like, do you, for one, take your own lessons? And also, two, do you feel pressure to be like, I need to sit upright and like be a certain way just so I can show that I'm a
Absolutely.
credible person?
I feel like my posture is already like, I'm like trying to check my posture every time just because I'm showing off and everything. But yeah, I mean, like, physical therapists have aches and pains too. Like we're completely human. But I think we're just a little bit more aware of our bodies and know how to like, manage certain areas of our bodies and everything. So I think that's the upside to it. Like I said, I'm a graduate student. Like I sit a lot. So I know the feeling of, being in the books or like looking at a computer and text over and everything, I think, the best way you can do that is like having a good ergonomic setup, which I think we've kind of talked about a little bit before, and just a little pro tip for some of the viewers here, but I like to use the 90-90 rule. So you want to try to keep your hips 90 degrees, your knees 90 degrees, and your ankles 90 degrees. So you always want to kind of keep that support there. I think having a little bit of a lumbar support, whether you have like a rolled up towel or a little like a pillow you can put in between there, I think that's always beneficial. But I think ultimately it's just moving your body out of different positions, and like stretching in between and all that. And I totally get, if you're in a work life where you're just like so busy and you're so focused on a certain task, I usually tell my patients, like, set an alarm on your phone, set an alarm on your computer, like tell yourself literally just get up, walk around a couple laps, sit back down. That is all you need. And just doing that, several times throughout the day.
And so what does that actually do? It's sort of like, it just forces your body to move, but like you're not necessarily strengthening things, but you're just sort of giving it enough variety.
Yeah, you're just moving it out of a different position more so. Like, when you're sitting down, like you have I would say naturally, like your spine tends to curve unless you have really great posture, right? Like your spine tends to curve, and so it's going to put a lot of force into like these discs that are in between your vertebrae. And that's ultimately a lot of what happens in terms of like nerve irritation, because you have a lot of your nerve roots that come out from your spinal cord, right? So I think just getting your body out of that position, whether it's going to help structurally, like I was saying before, or just muscularly, just like getting the muscles moving. Motion is lotion. That's all I gotta say.
So like, okay, so you're sitting at a desk and you should get up how often? Every 30 minutes, you say?
30 minutes, every 30 minutes to an hour is usually what I recommend. Or, if you have an adjustable standing desk, adjusting to a standing desk, sitting back down. Even better if you can go on a walk, just walk around, pace around kind of thing, and just sit back down. But yeah, I mean, I think it's also interesting because not everybody has the accessibility to have a great work desk set up at home, just with the whole pandemic and everything. And even like in an office, like some offices just don't set up their employer with good ergonomics, which I think for me personally, it is detrimental overall in life. I mean, in the U.S., we spend hundreds of billions of dollars every year just on low back pain, on management of low back pain, because Americans don't really know how to prevent it, or they're just not willing to seek really good care for it.
Yeah, it seems really hard because it's like every 30 minutes, and then like you go a day and you have a good day, and then you forget about it. And then also like what I'll do is I'll kick my feet up because I'm like, oh, this is comfy. Yeah. And then I'm like, that's the solution. Yeah. It's just
I admit I totally do that same thing too. Again, like I'm studying, like, okay, like, and actually it's interesting, like if you are in more of a reclined position compared to like up here, it's a little better for your back, because if you think about it, like gravity's going straight down on you, but if you're able to lean back and not have as much of that force on you, I mean, your spine is just not going to take as much of the force. So it's all about physics in a way. But I think, yeah, it's variable who you are as a person, what do you like to do, and kind of that thing. So I think it's just more of like catering your low back pain towards you specifically is going to be the best benefit.
And sort of a side note, when you get patients, can you tell off the bat if they're going to listen to what you're saying? Or
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can tell, like, they're like, I just want like one workout to do today. And
or you get people who are like, I'm just here to get a massage and everything like that, like just try to get my muscles loose and everything, and I'm just like, no, that's not quite what's gonna help. I think there's, again, certain instances where I think like doing like soft tissue type of work will help, but in the long term, it's, that's that chronic pain that's gonna continue to build up. So, you have people like walk into a PT clinic and be like, yeah, I've had back pain for 15 years. I played football. back in my day and I'm 61 years old, you know, and I'm like, okay, what do you do now? Right. I don't really care too much about your past history. I mean, I think that definitely is going to be a component to it, but I'm like, what are you doing for your back now? You know? So I think that's the realization, is that like you need to be active about your pain and not ignore it more so. Right.
So like one other thing about sitting down is like your hamstrings get tight. And obviously, and I want to ask like a couple follow-ups to that, but like when your body gets tight, so if you're sitting down, I mean, this is obvious because it just happened, but like when you're sitting down and you're in the same position, your hamstrings get tight, your hips get tight, and all that type of stuff. And that's just like what's happening when you're just sitting there. It's just because it's not moving, it's like, I'll just never have to do this. Like, you know, so your hamstrings are telling you like, this is, if you're going to do this, then I'm going to do this too.
Yeah. So I guess more specifically with the hamstrings are a really important muscle that they help support your knee. They attach to the back of your knee. They also attach to your pelvis, which is attached to your low back. So the hamstring, if it has tightness, it's going to pull on your pelvis and it's going to force your low back into a pelvic tilted position, which is again going to put a little bit more compression on certain areas of your spine that doesn't feel great. You know, hamstring tightness, I would say, is a pretty common factor in low back pain, so I definitely always recommend hamstring stretches. But at the same time, it's going to be a balance between stretching the hamstrings but also stretching your hip flexors, because you're always in that seated position. So your hip flexors are going to be right in front of your hips. They're going to be shortened after a while. Your hip flexors are also attached to your pelvis, which is also attached to your low back. And that's that balance between that tightness in terms of like your hip flexors, your hamstrings, also some of the lower back muscles, but also strengthening some of the deep core muscles and some of the glute muscles that ultimately help support all of that structure in terms of the bony structure and like the ligamentous structures in there, kind of thing.
So like when I'm sitting and I'm like hunched, and I feel like I'm not in terrible shape, but I know naturally, like, you know, I'll slouch with my shoulders forward and stuff like that, and I will feel a little bit of tightness in like my mid back, but I'm like, if you punch me in the stomach, I can at least flex, and like I know like I can at least absorb it, and like I know I'm stronger than some people, but I would bet that some, you know, people who are, you know, who would be less strong in a way, I'm having more trouble with them. So like, to me, it almost doesn't even, not that it doesn't make sense, but like I think I struggle, or like someone like me would struggle, where like I'm like, I play sports, you know, I like lift weights, but I still have like these sort of chronic issues where I feel like weak, and then, you know, someone will be like, yeah, your core is weak, your hamstrings are tight because you don't move them enough. It's just like, it feels really difficult strengthening all of those different like supportive muscles.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. I think understanding though that there is hundreds of muscles in your body, right? There's several muscles, and I think a lot of people are very honed in on like the mirror muscles, right? Like the six-pack abs, like your glutes, your quads, your hamstrings. Those are all very superficial muscles, but there's actually layers of muscles that run underneath that, especially in your core area. So beneath your big, like, it's called your rectus abdominis. Those are the six-pack muscles. But you have a few layers of muscles that run underneath. Like you have your oblique muscles, you have your internal, external oblique muscles, you have your transverse abdominis muscle. So those are more of the deeper muscles that are more attached towards the spine that help support that area. However, if you don't know the action for that muscle, like how to activate that muscle, how do you know how to strengthen it, right? So that's where physical therapy comes to play, or some sort of other medical practitioner where they teach you how to activate those muscles in terms of their action, right? So for example, like your transverse abdominis, it's a horizontal muscle. Think of it as like a corset, right? So it runs underneath that rectus abdominis, and it wraps around and kind of attaches towards like your lumbar fascia area and like the lumbar spine area. And that helps a lot with compression, being able to like support and everything like that. So a lot of people, you have the muscle, but it's just very weak. It's very hard to turn on. So that's where PT comes into play, where I will, cue a patient how to activate that muscle. Usually I'll have somebody lay on their back. I'll tell them to like draw their belly button towards their spine. Mm-hmm. And that's just kind of like, think of it as like a J motion, like drawing it in and then up kind of thing. And you'd be surprised, a lot of people just can't do that.
Yeah, I feel like those are the things where like you just get embarrassed because you're like, I can't. You're like, I can't lift my leg up. Like, out.
Right.
Right.
I mean, and like I said, I work in an orthopedic clinic, and we're in Arlington, right? Arlington is a very fitness-friendly community. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are very active in the community, but at the same time, you still have those people coming through, like, why do I have back pain even though I'm a runner?
Right.
Why do I have back pain even though I like do recreational volleyball or like other recreational sports and everything like that? So I think knowing how to target those specific muscles, not only the core, but especially like your hip muscles that are the pelvis muscles that attach to your pelvis, are also very important in terms of the low back.
Mm-hmm. Is yoga like the best thing then?
I recommend yoga for most people. I think yoga is great, just because there's different levels of yoga. Like there's very basic yoga where, you can, or even I'll recommend yoga or even Tai Chi more so for the elderly population. So help with balance, help with core stability, strength. So lots of good benefits in terms of the older population. In terms of like middle age, going into like, the younger adults, it could be more of like a maintenance program, right? So like more of just like keep your flexibility up, keep that strength up in terms of your core. And it depends how involved you get, right? There's all different kinds of yoga. There's hot yoga, there's weighted yoga, there's all different types. So I think I always try to cater what I recommend to people pertaining to what they like. If somebody is like, I completely don't like exercise, then you kind of have to find a way around that in a way and try to encourage them to move towards what, they'd be able to do or motivated in a way. Like find a motivation to get somebody to like move around,
I have medical gear. I wouldn't call it medical gear, but I have this type of stuff. We got the little spiky balls. And like people talk about lacrosse balls. I have this little thing here where you sit on. I actually was sitting on this incorrectly for about 4 months. I don't know if you can tell. So you're supposed to sit where your butt is here, right? And everything faces that way. Looking at this, I'm like, oh, my legs, this is the same shape of my legs. So my legs should be going this way. And this thing screwed up my back more than I could have ever imagined. Because I'm like, why do I feel like I'm not balanced here? I always feel like, there's some weird pressure. Like you can kind of see like it's got that hump in the middle. But then I realized, this is supposed to like relieve pressures or something like that. So I got like this stuff. I got this. I'm sitting on a little back support right here. I have a little back roller thing that you kind of roll on and sort of hear some pops. And then we got a foam roller and stuff like that. Basically, things that ensure that the ET industry is thriving.
Yeah.
So without, maybe you can go into specifics or whatever, but do these products work? And I know that they do in a way, but like, these can't be enough to fix the problems you have. They're for relief, but it seems like a hell of a lot of things to have when there's maybe just like better things you could do, such as just strengthening your body and all that type of stuff. But like, what's the purpose of these things? Are they good? Do you recommend them? That type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think like what you were just saying, it's a good form of relief. I actually have one of those foam, seated things because I'm sitting on my ass most of the day during school and like I'm studying a lot. So I totally get that. And I use that because I have a pretty shitty chair that I sit on, like kind of, it's very flat and that kind of thing. So that's why I wanted to use that instead of like buying a whole brand new chair. So that was my reasoning behind that. In terms of like the lacrosse ball, I think I definitely use that in my practice. Again, it's more of a form of relief in terms of like trying to get muscular tightness relief type of thing. So usually I'll recommend like somebody rolling up, like leaning up against the wall with the lacrosse ball and kind of working certain muscles. I'll show them which ones to kind of target a little bit. Same kind of concept with the foam roller. The ball is just going to get a little bit more localized to certain areas. I actually haven't used too much of this circular thing. I don't know what you use that exactly for.
So like they have ads for some of this too, where this isn't called like the chirp, but it's like kind of weird where they have one product. It's basically similar where you kind of roll this on the middle of your back and you're on the ground.
So you're like leaning back onto that. Okay.
You're like on the ground or like against the wall and you kind of use it and whatever. What I hear a lot of people say is like, don't do it on your spine, or like be careful with your spine, and obviously, but there's this one called the chirp or something like that where like the advertisement is literally just like a heavy guy and then they turn up the sound really loud and all you hear is his back popping, and I'm like, I'm sure that's relief. It doesn't seem like that's like the most sustainable. It does seem like the most American invention, right? It's just like some overweight guy popping his back into place and feeling like he's solved
cured,
his problems.
Just completely cured, yeah.
So that's what that is. I actually do use it like in the middle of the day sometimes where I can feel like, oh, I'm getting a little tight, especially like in the middle of my back.
Yeah. I can definitely see different ways to use that. I haven't personally used that. But yeah, I mean, I could totally see. And again, it's based on the person. I wouldn't necessarily put an older guy on that or like somebody who's like obese or something like that. Like it's more of like that relief factor, but what is the long-term solution, right? Like what is going to help with your back pain and help prevent you from having functional impairments? I think a lot of older people that I see with back pain, they want to be able to play with their grandkids or their kids in general. They want to be able to move around, they want to be independent, and so that stuff is not necessarily going to help them. It goes back to the fact of strengthening certain areas of your body, keeping mobile in certain areas of your body. Like, as you get older, it's just going to take more maintenance on your body to take care of itself. I mean, again, like, there's going to be natural changes that occur, and so it's more of like, are you going to adapt to that type of thing? So
like with everybody trying to seek temporary relief, because it feels good. It feels really good. And I know the answer is yes, but is there a way, like for someone like me, who I'm like, my back kind of stiff, whatever, I've started to notice it a little bit where I'm getting up and, like you start just having those little aches and stuff. Like, is there an effective way, and I know the answer is yes, I do physical therapy, but like if I do workouts that are focused on this, but I continue to sit like on a chair that stinks or something like that, if I strengthen my body enough, will I have to do that for months? Or like, if I do it for like 1 month, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, I strengthen my back, I feel really good, the next 4 weeks feel really good, maybe because it's like strong or whatever. But is physical therapy then just like an ongoing thing in the sense that like you don't want to fall behind? You should probably, just because your problems are solved temporarily with a PT or something like that, you probably also need to like keep up with your own health.
Exactly. Think about it as a maintenance program, right? Like usually with physical therapy, we prescribe exercise. We prescribe a home exercise program. We call it HEP. And so that's usually while you're in PT, you're going to be doing your hep. I usually call it homework in a way. So sometimes I feel like I'm a dentist. I'm like, did you floss? Did you do your exercises? That kind of thing. Like, you have to make the patient buy in and like be active about it, even if they have chronic pain. You know, so be like, okay, I've had this, going back to that person I was explaining earlier, I've had this back pain for 10 years, all of that stuff. Like, now I want to address it. I don't expect to have changes overnight when you're doing that. But I want to show you different ways that you can move your body and know different ways that gives you relief. So eventually, throughout your time in PT, you want to adjust your HEP, your home exercise program, towards you individually, towards your goals, what you want to do. And so I think it's just ultimately a maintenance program. And I think your goals are ultimately going to change over time as well. You know, I think you right now, like, you're just trying to maybe avoid the chronic onset, or, you know, just being able to not notice pain in your back because you're like, I'm young, I don't need to do this, like, I'm active and everything like that. So I think it's more of like the injury prevention, if you think about it in that sense. So yeah, I think it's just knowing how to individually cater towards that.
Yeah, like there was last summer I was starting to notice like some back tightness, and I was doing this one workout that was like working amazingly, and then like a year later I'm like, I have the same back thing. And I obviously, the winter was tough, everyone's at home, all that type of stuff, so like kind of like you're just fighting gravity, you're like fighting, you know, I don't want to say we're all doomed, but, you know, it feels like, oh man, we're in this constant battle against our own lifestyles. And so it's like, oh man, this is kind of tough. But if you, like you said, if you do have like the goals, and obviously like the better shape you're in, maybe the less, just the tweaking you need to do. Yeah,
and, you know, I think with the whole obesity epidemic going on with in the U.S. especially, if you think about it, you have a lot of abdominal fat, right? Yeah. So like we call it adipose tissue in the medical term.
What is it called?
Adipose tissue. Adipose tissue. Okay. But let's just say it's fat, right? So you got a lot of fat into like your frontal area, but that changes your center of gravity, right? So like your center of gravity, in most people, it's going to be right in front of your sacrum, which is your S2, which is a little bit more below your lower back. So where you're kind of like where your hips connected to your back, you have like that triangle type of shaped bone. So your center of gravity is right in front there. But if you think about it, if you have a lot of tissue there, that's going to change your gravity in a sense. So your muscles have to work harder to be able to keep you upright in certain positions, again, because you're going to feel like you're falling forward. So these back muscles are almost overworking in a sense just to compensate for the weight, you know? So it goes back to like the multifactorial thing. It could be your weight, it could be your lifestyle. Like, I mean, a lot of different components go into play with back pain, for sure.
So like when your body's compensating, like you said, your back is like working overdrive. Does that necessarily mean your back is getting stronger, or does it just mean it's like just straining, like it's just holding on for dear life?
Yeah, I would say the latter. Okay. So it's more of like those postural muscles that keep you erect and upright. Like they're not necessarily meant to take that much load in a sense. And if they're not able to support that goes straight into kind of the deeper structures, into your spine, adding those forces, the compressive forces towards that area, and that's usually what causes some of the issues with that. So it kind of varies in terms of the presentation of low back pain. You probably heard of sciatica. That's more of like a nerve-like issue, but then there's also just like normal aches and pains in your low back, and that may be more of like muscular pathology.
Is sciatica like, does a nerve like slip from inside of where it should be? Like how does sitting a certain way and maybe I don't know, but like how does somebody develop that? Because shouldn't everything, how does a nerve end up becoming a problem?
Good question. So nerve roots, they stem from your spinal cord, right, which come from your spine. But you also have a disc that runs in between your vertebrae, and that's just going to help with compression, right? However, the disc it's very fluid. It's made mostly of water, and it can shift. Usually it goes in a posterior lateral direction, which means it goes like back and to the side. And that's where your nerve runs. So when that disc kind of herniates out, it's going to compress right onto that nerve. The sciatic nerve is a very, very large nerve. It runs from multiple spinal segments. So it can really be affected from, usually the most common area is L4, L5. The lumbar area where the compression is, because that's where the curve starts to happen in your spine. But also the sciatic nerve can be compressed in other areas. That's just from the root of it. It spreads down and it runs in between your muscles. So there's certain muscles that the sciatic nerves run underneath. So if you have a tight piriformis muscle or tight glute muscles or weakness in the muscles, that can compress that nerve as well. So the nerves like to move. They like to have space. They like to have blood flow, all of that area around it. So any sort of compression to it, it's usually going to cause the sciatic symptoms in terms of like numbness, tingling, shooting pain down the leg. That's pretty typical with sciatica, like down in the back of the leg in terms of the nerval pathway that it goes.
Dear Lord. Yeah. I feel like I thought somehow like the nerve like slips out of the place.
The nerve doesn't necessarily move. It's more of the structures that compress into it. Yeah.
Are your patients like woefully ignorant about like the situation? Like like if somebody'd be like, yeah, this is my life, and they're like sitting like this, or like, how is anything bad happening to me? Like, like it seems pretty much like maybe either in a little bit denial or whatever, just like plain ignorance. Like, I don't know what happens to the sciatic nerve. You just told me. I thought like it basically just comes loose or something like that. I don't know. But are we like, and do you have patients who are just like woefully ignorant about like the lifestyle that they have or what they're doing, where they're like maybe not understanding like how they're harming themselves or,
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's interesting, how much culture takes into play. Again, like being in the Arlington area, you have a lot of I would say mainly like white predominant type of population, but you also have a lot of minorities in the area who did not grow up in the US and have different cultures and how they approach exercise or pain, right? So, sometimes I'll get people from a different area of the world who deals with pain like holistically, like they don't take any medications, they deal it in a certain way, or their culture is, they have to kneel a lot, they have to sit a lot, or they have to be in different positions and everything like that. So, and just knowing how different cultures deal with pain, like some cultures like don't think that pain is a red flag in a way in terms of like you need to like get that changed, or there's some cultures that are like, oh my gosh, like pain is so prominent, I'm in so much pain I literally can't do anything, when in reality like you need to move and you need to address it, otherwise you're just gonna continue to like downgrade from there. So again, I think it depends on the individual. So I think it's just important to think about like who you're talking to in terms of low back pain, because there's all sorts of different variations of it.
Right. Do you feel like there's a lot of guys, let's say they're more like my age, who like kind of like don't believe you in a way where they're like, okay, I'll do this for like a couple days, it'll be good and whatever. Like what happens there? Like who are these guys?
Yeah. I think in terms of PT, it's more of like trying to get that buy-in factor with the patient, right? So like teaching them something different that they didn't know about before. So maybe going back to like the anatomy, like knowing the different muscles that you need to target. Maybe you just need to show them how to target those muscles, working on like breathing techniques, because breathing actually, just normal things we do throughout the life, a lot of people don't know how to breathe correctly, and that's very important in terms of like the stability of your spine and all of that. So yeah, I mean, I totally get a lot of like meatheads coming through that are just like, okay, I like deadlift and I squat all the time. Like, why does my back hurt? You know, and I'm like, so let's work on just breathing right now. And they're like, what? Right.
Will those guys like be repeat guys coming in or whatever? Or like, do you ever get someone who's like, yeah, I was wrong, I'm sorry. Like, I'll start listening now.
I definitely get a lot of repeat patients. I don't know if it's necessarily like I'll start listening, but I think it's a affirmation that like they believe in physical therapy and they're like, oh, this does work. Like, let me go back and like try to learn something else that I can do, type of thing. So, I mean, my job is all about giving you the right tools to know how to manage what you need for your body, type of thing. So just catering it towards that, you know, compared to like some guy who likes to do a lot of like strength, like lifting, like heavy barbell lifting, that type of thing, compared to like, you know, you have a pretty frail elderly woman who has low back pain, you know. So it's just two completely different approaches that you got to go.
Well, I think one of the things too that's kind of, I think I fall into is like, you kind of just think, I'm getting older. Like, that's a very much like a cultural thing in America where it's like, I'm getting older, my back, my knees, whatever. Like, there's some people I know who are like, yeah, my knees are shot. And I'm like, I've never seen you do any. Like, I knew like, I don't think they are. I think you just don't use them. You know, or like, oh yeah, I blew them out, but like they didn't have like an ACL or whatever. But I do feel like we are sort of accustomed to just feeling like pain is just a natural part of getting older and weakening and all that type of stuff. And then you have like, take Advil, you know, it's like, I like the like heartburn commercials where it's like, yeah, take heartburn for like eating like chicken wings and ice cream, you know. It's like, well, maybe you shouldn't be eating those.
Right.
And then you start to like not have the heartburn.
Yeah.
So, you know, I feel like that is just built in where we just feel like pain is normal when it probably shouldn't be.
Absolutely. I mean, I think just American culture, just it's very catered towards immediate relief in terms of pain, whether it be taking a pill or, you know, using these types of tools and everything for that quick relief. But why are you not going to try to solve the root of the problem? You know, when you could, maybe when you're young, right? Like you can know how to move your body, but at the same time, again, like knowing how to adjust to it as your body changes over time. I think it's natural for humans to gain weight over time, just, you know, being, your metabolism isn't as fast as before, right? So I think it's all about just trying to like use different ways that you enjoy, right? Like exercise should never be a chore, I would say. It should be enjoyable in a way, and you should kind of look forward to it because it makes you feel better. I mean, a lot of times like it kind of sucks getting there in the moment, but like afterwards it's like, I don't hear many people are like, wow, like I didn't feel good after exercising, you know. Like it's kind of like getting yourself to that point is the hardest part.
Yeah, I feel like kind of like what you're saying, like we kind of exercise for the wrong reasons, you know. We want like big chest, you know, strong, like you want a strong back but not in the right ways.
Yeah,
or like
yeah.
you see those like images of like I forget, it was like the body types, like a mesomorph or something, like somebody who carries more weight in their like midsection versus like a guy who wants to look like a V or whatever and have like broad back, like really skinny hips or something like that. Like, are they the healthiest expectations to have for people? Should they have like a more, people should probably have a more health focused approach to weightlifting or exercise opposed to just, glamour, looking good or whatever, because they're also probably similar.
Absolutely.
Too.
Yeah. And I think it's important to think that everybody has a different body type, everybody's, you talk about posture, right? Like posture, yes, there is an ideal posture, but in reality, it's not ideal towards everybody. Like everybody is going to have a different posture because they have a different genetic makeup, they have a different type of body frame and everything like that. So it kind of goes back to the center of gravity, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have a little bit broader shoulders, if you have a little bit more adipose tissue in the front, your body is going to try to adjust to it so you're, not in a non-functional position, right? Mm-hmm. So like you want to be able to do like your daily activities without pain or be able to do it with ease or efficiency, right? So I think that for me personally kind of motivates me in a way, like how I want to be able to like move without putting a lot of strain onto myself and my body and everything like that. Me personally, what I do for my exercise routine is I just do my own thing. Like I don't do anything too crazy. I do my own like workout in terms of like I mainly do like functional strengthening, so dumbbells. I don't really do more than like 20-30 pounds or so, but it depends on the exercise that you're giving, right? And then I do like aerobic exercise for more of like my cardiovascular benefit and everything. So cardiovascular benefits is a whole nother topic type of thing, but that can also help with back pain as well, type of thing.
So I got a couple questions, then we'll probably wrap up a little bit, and then we'll do a little visual analyzation of what I'm working with here.
Love it.
So there are secret muscles.
Fair enough.
And you guys know about them, and the regular people don't. I don't think this is a conspiracy. But it is crazy that we don't know, like this muscle underneath your abs or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, like it doesn't take much to make someone look silly trying to work those muscles, like you were saying. It's I don't know, it's just kind of crazy, like the what or what a physical therapist knows, and you're like, you must be like just like hitting your head against the wall, because like also like on the macro level, no one knows in the lay field, like we don't know like about these secret hidden muscles and stuff like that. Like when you were learning about it, were you like, holy shit, like we're doing this all wrong?
Yeah, I think, just being in this graduate program, it's definitely made me deeper analyze what is going on with the human body and like why we're moving this way or why it's causing this pain kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's all about education, right? Like you don't know what you don't know. And that's what a physical therapist is there for. A physical therapist is to educate you a lot, to know how to manage everything that you're trying to, in terms of your goal, like trying to accomplish with all of that. So yeah, I mean, I think it's mind-blowing for those, weightlifters that come through and like I never knew I had that muscle inside of me, Right. So I'm just like, what is that? So I rarely give weights to people in a PT clinic. Even, the pretty strong people, like if I know how to position somebody in a way to target a certain smaller muscle and be like, wow, that was a good muscle burn, and I didn't have to add any resistance to that.
Well, yeah, I'm sure there's some stuff I got to figure out too. So last question.
Sure.
Like we're talking about like the lumbar thing here, and like we've talked about in the past about like orthotics and stuff like that, and like I feel like there's maybe some pros and cons to it in the sense that like it provides that support, but at the same time your body, it's sort of supplementing what your body should be doing. So is it something that you should have all the time, or should it be something that you're kind of like working to get rid of, or like with some of these ergonomic things, or like are they helping as much as they could be, or should we kind of just try to work our way off of those?
It depends on what you're using. I think in terms of the lumbar support, I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily, because if you think about it, you have to sit for a long period of time for your work duties, right? So like it can be just an adjunct towards what you're already doing in terms of your low back pain. So say if you are a PT patient, I wouldn't say like stop using your lumbar support. I would encourage you to use it, but also move around, do your home exercise program, like do other things, like be active about your back other than, this is a very passive thing, right? Like having that instant relief. That's what you're using it for. But like in reality, like over time, it's not going to provide you complete relief. I think over time, it's going to be a lot of other areas to approach it to be able to resolve what you want, type of thing.
So then I'll just wrap up with this. Like, so on a typical work day, if you're telling somebody in 30 seconds or a minute or whatever what you should be doing, so you should be sitting down 90, 90, 90, and getting up every 30 minutes and strengthening. If somebody had to just strengthen a few muscles, or just they know they're not going to listen all the way, but they just need like a little pitch to be like, here's what you should do, and that'll solve 60% of your problems. What should they do on a typical day?
I would say working on your core, so that transverse abdominis muscle I was talking about, it's a muscle that its action is compression. So usually all you do is just draw your belly button towards your spine. That muscle is going to pop out. So I think motor control over time, or body awareness, goes a long ways. So if you think about it every time, like when you're brushing your teeth, when you're sitting down, doing random things, drawing that belly button, see if you can hold it for a few seconds. And I think over time, it'll naturally get stronger, right? It'll naturally be able to like turn on automatically. I think also your glute muscles, not necessarily your big gluteus maximus muscle, but you have your gluteus medius muscle, you have gluteus minimus muscle. So you have a lot of other glute muscles that help support your back. So usually I do a lot of hip strengthening, lots of hip strengthening, a lot of core strengthening in terms of low back pain.
Well, cool. All right. Well, Cheryl, it was awesome having you. I'm going to try to do it. I'm going to try to keep you posted.
Love it.
I hope this is the worst my back will ever feel for the rest of my life.
I would hope so.
Especially sitting here for 45 minutes or whatever.
I know. I'm feeling it already. I'm just kind of like...
Right, exactly. All right, everybody. As advertised, Cheryl is going to be doing a general low back assessment on me. We're going to find out what's wrong with me, and maybe that'll help you in figuring out what you're doing wrong too. So, what we're doing here.
All right, so you can face towards me, and all I'm gonna have you do is just try to reach down towards your toes and just see how far you can go.
Okay. Without trying, or just kind of?
Just let it fall. So you already see you got a lot of movement right in his thoracic spine here, but he has some pretty good mobility right in his lumbar spine. So I would say, where are you feeling this? Is this more like a stretch in your hamstrings, or
stretch in the hamstrings?
Right in the hamstrings, not necessarily the low back area.
Low back a little bit.
Okay, come on back up. Any pain going down or on the way back up?
Yeah, a little on the lower right side. Little discomfort.
That's normal. And then hands on your hips, and you're just going to try to lean back as far as you can.
Okay.
All right. How was that? Probably a motion you don't do very often.
Not too bad. Not too bad.
Okay.
Actually, kind of go further.
Okay. What I'm basically looking for is if there's any pain reproduced with that. Where are you feeling this necessarily?
Woo! I felt it all in my stomach.
Okay. That
All in
was
my
probably
stomach.
just your abdominals trying to prevent you from, falling back there.
Splitting in half.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So now I want to let's start by looking at your hamstring flexibility, since you said that your hamstrings felt a little tight when you were bending forward. So I'm going to get you laying on your back on this very sturdy table here.
Oh yeah, that feels good.
And yeah, already, just, this is what I get paid for. So straighten out your knee, and I'm just going to bring this up. And you can try to straighten out this leg if you can. Yeah. And it should kind of feel like
Old rubber bands.
a stretch, yeah? So usually in males, you want to try to get at least 80 degrees of hip flexion through here. So you're actually not too bad. You're fairly flexible, I would say.
Really? Wow.
Which is nice. Although I feel like your hamstring is very tight.
Yes, right in the lower part.
When I do that. So I probably would give you like a hamstring stretch at home that you can try out if you were to do that. And then very quickly we can look at your hip strength. So can I have you lay on your right side here?
Okay.
So this is going to be testing some of your gluteus medius muscle, which is more located on this side of
All right.
your
Do what you want.
Straighten out this top leg.
Everyone's watching this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very nice here. Roll your hip forward, lift up your leg, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just press down onto your leg. So you're going to hold that. Don't let me push you down. Hold strong. Ooh, Phil, that's pretty good. Lay on your stomach.
It's like college all over again.
And then bend this knee. Can you lift that knee up off the table? Hold it right there. Don't let me push you down. Hold strong. Okay, not bad. So the way that I test that out, it's a 0 to 5 scaling. 0 meaning you can't even lift up your leg in that position. 5 meaning it's based on how much you give when I'm pushing down on you. So actually the first one that I did, I would give you like a 5 minus. So think about like an A minus type of thing. This last one I'd give you like more of a 4 plus. So like maybe like a B plus, room for improvement kind of thing. So, but overall I would say I'm pretty impressed by that. So
Wow, okay.
Phil is strong.
You heard that? I'm doing well. I still have a little bit of, I think it's from like slouching and stuff, but that's probably other stuff happening then, or?
Yeah, that might be more in like your thoracic spine, like up through here, like your upper body. Everything's connected, right? Like the whole kinetic chain and everything like that. So, you know, if you have issues up through here, that can kind of stem down towards your low back area, or low back area can kind of stem up through your upper thoracic and cervical spine area. So.
Wow. All right. Well, hey, I'm pretty fit, so we have proof. So, you know, if anyone ever says anything, I'm a 5 minus.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at on a scale of 5. Not a 10. We're not, you know, whatever. But anyway, well, thanks, Cheryl. That was a lot of fun.
Cool.
And stay fit, stay strong, and we'll see you next time.